Well, hey everybody, I'm Marti Mongiello. I'm here today live at Got Books in Shelby, North Carolina. And this is a fantastic bookstore. Uh, just loaded, and we have been following this particular bookstore for quite a while. They were over on Interstate 74 for many years and expanded to this beautiful location here quite some time ago. So it's just been amazing. And then they started selling smoothies and all types of CBD products. They really have expanded quite a bit with crystals here. They have a massive gift shop featuring all kinds of crystals and bowls and singing bowls and even tie dye scarves. Got Books is also doing a great job with albums, comics, many things. So come by Got Books in Shelby, North Carolina today. I'm happy to present this short movie that I made called Women in War with the help of my friends Tim and Carl at White Manor Productions. And this particular book that we're going to just take a look at today about Mary Patton is easy to see featured in this short film. So let me put on this Women in War Colonial Rosie Riveters right now so you can see it, and then we'll jump into taking a look here at the book itself. This was my eighth book that I had published, and I often say, it's fun just to be able to go out there and do these Daughters of the American Revolution speeches, sign books, sell books, and make donations to the SAR, the Sons of the American Revolution, the Daughters of the American Revolution, and certainly Tommy Holt with his uh, Bridge for History event last month down at Spartanburg Memorial Auditorium was terrific. So I give you Women in War, Colonial Rosie the Riveters. Let's take a look at that. And you guys should be able to see that real good. I think I'll make it full screen for everybody. And let's not start at the end. Let's start at the beginning, right? Just an idea, not saying that that's a great one, but it might be a good idea. Okay.
Hi, I'm Marti Mongiello, and I have been working for the better part of 11 years of research in and around the Charlotte region. I live here, and as a former presidential aide and working with the Smithsonian and Library of Congress with the presidency of the United States for 5 different presidents now, 25 years. It's been a real joy to get this second master's degree from Lenore Ryan University, and as part of my practicum, to be researching women in war in and around the Charlotte area. Yeah, one of the huge reasons for me doing this is I'm a tremendous proponent of the Me Too movement and Time's Up, and really women coming of age and breaking those glass ceilings is on my mind, especially with an 8-year-old daughter. My wife also, honestly, was in the military herself, so I've just always been a big supporter of women. And when it came to researching and bringing to light women's contributions to create this country, the United States of America, this was a golden opportunity for me. This has been a unbelievable odyssey for me. About 4 months now studying at Lenore Ryan University and at the Charlotte Museum of History, and now being a guest speaker at Sycamore Shoals State Park in Tennessee, getting ready to head on over there and be a guest speaker for the Women in War exposition that I've been sponsoring and researching and doing. So it's just been quite amazing to research and study women during the 1700s. Part of that odyssey that I've really enjoyed is the study of Mary Patton and many of the other women around Charlotte and the Charlotte Metrolina region, which extends into Western North Carolina. And this odyssey in publishing the book for Mary Patton has just been fantastic. She, of course, comes through Charlottetown and Charlottesburg, or if you just want to call it Charlotte many times, is a regular part of the society around here in selling her black powder. So people really do know Mary Patton. Mary Patton first, of course, moved down from Pennsylvania to live in this region here, and then would come through riding often with her husband, John Patton, headed to Wilmington and Charlestown and Savannah, and selling her black powder. Mary would often stop and stay at taverns, of course, with her husband. And one of the most famous is Captain Jack's Tavern in Charlotte. So if you're headed to the coast selling your black powder, it's pretty awesome to be able to stay with friends like Colonel Hambright and Colonel Cleveland and all the people who live around here. Colonel Hampton, to see them, or even to write to them and tell them, I will be in Charlottetown soon, and to give them the exact date. And then, of course, they would buy black powder at the tavern from her because she brought it with her. The link with Captain Jack, of course, and Mary Patton as good friends is Captain Jack. Everybody knows they kind of ride around Charlotte and they see the massive $500,000 statue of Captain Jack up on his horse, riding with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Declaration of Independence to Philadelphia. And so these are the types of friends that Mary has in and around the Kings Mountain and Charlotte region. And then finally, many of the other women in my research have just been fascinating to discover and come across. The Alexanders are some of the most famous, starting with the Hezekiah Alexander House, which is right behind the Charlotte Museum of History. But also Colonel Polk's house is right on the Court Square of Charlotte. It's the only house painted white, and one of his daughters married the governor, actually the first governor from the Charlotte Metrolina region for the state of North Carolina. So many of these women are intimately involved, and one of my favorites is Hezekiah Alexander's wife. And finally, I would just wrap up some of the more famous things today with the women that are participating and helping in the war effort here and around Charlotte. Really is Mary Sample Alexander, Hezekiah Alexander's wife. She is the one during the occupation of Charlotte who is doing the secret signals up in the window of the house. So the next time you're at the house behind the Charlotte Museum of History and you're upstairs and you're looking out one of the windows, you'll think about her signaling to the men, particularly sons were signaled to, it's safe to come back to the house right now. The British are actually not here right now, and you can resupply quickly, but get out of here. So this was often done by many different women to assist the war effort up in the windows.
Yeah. Okay. All right, guys. Let me just drop that screen from sharing and say that a lot of the ladies in and around the area, including one of the newest paintings we've had done of Susanna Twitty, just have never really been covered. And so this is a fantastic and exciting area for a lot of people. Even many men have mentioned to me they're so burned out on everything they've studied and researched that to find out something new is kind of cool. And so it is exciting. It's opening up a whole new area of research, things to write about, things to examine, and information you never heard of before. Mary Patton, of course, I will bring up the book here to take a look at on Amazon and share that with you. Let me make sure you can see this screen here. If you're on Amazon, you'll notice that it comes in print like this for $29.98 and full color inside. And then also, very nice, if you are looking actually at my author page, you'll notice if two different ways you can come in here if you were to come in. You'll notice over here I have the Kindle edition and has a little bit of a different cover on it. So, the heroic story of an outlander and colonial wartime shero. So Mary Patton, coming from Scotland, McKeon, and originally living in Pennsylvania and then settling and moving down to what we today call Tennessee, but at the time was called North Carolina. So this was Western North Carolina, long before the Tennessee was created. And the Hyder family recruited her from Carlisle, Pennsylvania, to come down, move down here, and start doing black powder down here, making black powder and practicing your craft and art and everything. So this is the Kindle version. The previous version I showed you is the in print. And also over here, you can see on audible.com, if you'd like to listen to this book, we have a slightly different cover for it because this conforms to the SAG-AFTRA, the Screen Actors Guild formatting, which is more perfectly square for those of you that like to listen to audiobooks. It's been kind of crazy. I've had people actually buy both. They're listening to the audiobook, like Patty Frudenberg with her husband Michael, all the way from New York down to North Carolina. And I asked them, you bought the book, why did you buy the audiobook? They said it was so interesting that they wanted to listen to it in the car. So this will get you over to the audiobook sample. And I'm not going to play this because this is not a children's book. This is an adult book. And so there are some words used in here that are not for public showcasing. And, I would just say it's not as bad as Game of Thrones, or as bad as Outlander. So if you like those shows, we often say that this book is Game of Thrones and Outlander approved. You'll get a chance to listen to her speak in her true voice of love, intimacy, of course, her children, her friends of the Taylors, and many of the colonels that live around here, like Colonel Hambright, who my wife, this is her family, Hampton, Cleveland, Sevier, and many more, like Private Ishmael Titus and Captain Redhead from the Catawba Nation, and Sally New River of the Catawba Indian Nation. So it is mature audience rated. And if you hear any vulgarities or something, those are been used, those kinds of words, since the 1600s and going all the way back to the 1400s, actually. So I would just say thank you to the narrator of this book, who I hired through the Screen Actors Guild, Susan Hunter. And she is doing very well as all get out. I'll just go over to her narrator's page because she has done many other books, you'll notice. And so you can take a look at different things. And it's interesting to see, when the person pops up, they'll pop back up again as having narrated a new book. So all kinds of books, mysteries, but they do keep working in the industry, these actors, and they will often be narrating other books as well. If you want to sign up with Audible on a free trial, this book is free, and you can enjoy the audiobook for free, complimentary. Also on Kindle, it is free as well, and $9.98 to buy. So if you're on Kindle Unlimited, it's a great program. You can get bunches and bunches of books, and then if you would like to purchase the paper book, which is full color inside, I would just say here, this is the paper version. So let me come back to you full screen here a second. And I think the nice thing about the paper version is, it does have the full color paintings that my wife and I have commissioned over the years. So the full color paintings are in there. And this is never easy to do. Full color publishing. Printing costs right now are through the roof and cost so much money. Thank you to Dr. Shazia also uh, in India. But yeah, the full color and quite a large, I would just say quite a large index in the back. One thing I did want to do, I always love doing an index. So I think an index is very important in your book to help people find things that they're looking for. Pages and pages of an index, and then your bibliography in the back is always very important to me as well. A lot of people like to read more and to know, like, where would I go to read more, or another book that he's quoting. He's quoting about Celtic, heritage and war fighting and warrior cult-like behavior. Where would I read more of that about? So, that is very important to have an extensive bibliography. And in this particular book, the bibliography is, my goodness gracious, 12 pages long of, bibliography. So I originally published this book as part of my master's degree. And, professors love this kind of stuff. So, yeah. Now I would like to just read for you a couple comments on the back. One was for John Hancock, is always hilarious to me. He said, after signing his name so large on the Declaration of Independence, he said, quote, "There, His Majesty can now read my name without his glasses, and he can double the reward on my head." So that's often why John Hancock signed his name so large, because he was trying to be funny with King George III, who wore glasses to read papers. Another quote on the back is from Dr. Benjamin Franklin. "We must all hang together, or assuredly we shall all hang separately." Very, very interesting to see. And the last one I will read for you on the back is from Patrick Henry. And he said, "The battle, sir, is not to the strong alone. It is to the vigilant, the active, the brave. Besides, sir, we have no election. If we were base enough to desire it, it is now too late to retire from the contest. There is no retreat, but in submission and slavery our chains are forged. Their clanking may be heard on the plains of Boston. The war is inevitable, and let it come. I repeat, sir, let it come." And so, some very famous quotes in this particular book. And one thing I wanted to do with this was also to have, obviously a dedication. And I dedicated this book where I had gone and done a speech at Sycamore Shoals State Park in Tennessee, where Mary Patton is buried, very close by in Elizabethton. So I dedicated this book to Sycamore Shoals State Park, and also to the Kings Mountain History Museum here in Kings Mountain, North Carolina, and the very many sponsors who keep them financially alive. And also I mentioned that Mary Patton shattered glass ceilings for a woman in the 1700s and let many a man know that it was time's up before he haven't had a chance to act up. So seemed to be important to me. In the beginning, you will see after the dedication a table of contents, and I also have what's called an acknowledgments page. So a couple of different things you can do when you're publishing a book: a dedication, an acknowledgments page. Um, Obviously, you're going to have an index, and you may have an introduction. So that would be another element that you could add. Contents, and I did elect to put what is called an introduction as well in this book. And so my introduction mentions some of the amazing women in my life from the military, Everybody, I think, knows that I'm retired military. And I wanted to emulate in this book what I had seen in about 1,200 some other books published by Osprey Men at Arms who follow this format of full color publishing. So Osprey has about 1,200 plus books out, and they're sold all over the world in the most famous museums across the earth in about 190 countries. And I just loved their publishing format. And so I can do this all day long. They have, like I said, they have like 1,200 editions, all pretty much for the Osprey Men at Arms series, all pretty much on different elements of war. And I just have always loved their full color, easy to read publishing format. They were recently purchased and bought out completely by Bloomsbury Publishing of England. Super, super cool because Bloomsbury is massive. And if you can get into these types of books when you're at the museums of the world, they're typically on a spindle rack that spins around, and they'll have 20 to 30 associated subject matters. Many of our friends work for Osprey Men at Arms in Bloomsbury, like Ed and Kathy Gilbert, who have come here locally and stayed for weeks researching and writing books like the famous book about the Battle of Camden. And so they're doing just a terrific job. And today, I would go on ahead and like to read a short passage for you today. This is on page 23. And I would also mention I'm going to read what are called some footnotes. So if you're interested in publishing also, I discussed a number of factors you'll have to make a decision about with your books. And, you know, you have like kind of like a crossroads. Do you want to add that? Do you want to do that part? Do you not? Dr. Faiz Shahani, thank you so much also, Dr. Faiz. And I saw my wife was doing a pinky wave there. So thank you to many of you in the audience watching around the world. I mentioned a lot of different factors, and I'll just recap them for you because I've been asked to conduct a 3-part series on publishing. So I've agreed to do that. And many of you know I've become a professor at an Indian university. So that's been exciting this year. But the first one I mentioned was, do you want to have a dedication in your book? Obviously, you're going to have a table of contents everybody has. Do you want to have an acknowledgments in your book section in the front? Do you want to have an introduction in your book? These are all things for you to think about. And then, you know, you get into the book. And as I mentioned, mine has full color photos. Where are you going to get these photos from? These are all paintings that we have commissioned and owned for over 10 years of commissioned paintings. And as well as the front, this is by Jeff Trexler, the famous artist. And I credit him as the artist on Amazon as well. But then in the back is where I mentioned to you, you know, do you want to have a bibliography? Okay. And do you want to go on ahead and have an index and do all that? It's a bit of extra work, but the reason I bring that up is because on page 23, if you have my book and you were to turn there, I have one more element that you could add, and it's called footnotes. Let me see if you can see that down there. Footnotes. So this is for when you're reading and you come to something and it has a little tiny footnote. And then you can go down to the bottom of the page and read about that. And I'm going to read about those today as well. Okay. But you can also have end notes. So that's towards the end where a lot of people will read the end notes and study something about what you mentioned in your book. So this chapter was chapter 4, The Daily Work of a Deviant and Rebel by Mary Patton. For every reason, when the husband of Mary John Patton, made tea in the afternoon. It was the tender signal to her that it was afternoon delight that day. The sun would shine in as the branches swayed in light wind on perfect days early, avoiding the need for candles. He would always bake scones for her and have them on heavy round table of iron straps screwed together with hickory with smaller flowers he had picked on a plate nearing death within 2 hours unless she gave them to water. His plucking was only a minute before his calling for her each time. Why didn't he ever pick large ones or longer ones, she often mused. It's just one of his little ways. Being raised with scones, singing specific songs while churning butter and jam, Mary remembered these traditions of her family despite leaving the United Kingdom Isles at an early age, which is why John used such beautiful thin-handled cups and matching green-flowered china saucers that they kept safely on the cupboard, a rare luxury for people living in the backwoods of the Forbidden Zone. So on that particular page, there is footnote 22 and 23, and so naturally those are down there. In fact, it's 22, 23, and 24. So if you wanted to look those up and read more about when you see that little tiny number, you could read about that. And here I'll read number 22. This was actually after the word hickory. So a prized wood today, as it generally costs more to purchase a solid hickory piece of furniture, especially with so many particle board items for sale that include cam locks and putting it all together for hours at your house. Okay, anybody that loves cam locks, you go to IKEA and you get a whole package of furniture with cam locks and you're putting it together for hours. And item 23, butter churning songs are viral in this period and culturally oriented. They're famed from country to country and colony to colony. So when you're churning butter, and my wife grew up churning butter, and we were at a family reunion, I think last year, and the famous butter churn of the family was over there in the church community room. And she said, yeah, that's churn. And she kind of pointed her finger at it and said, I did quite a bit of work with that. The word China was used. It's not new on earth as a country, but Samuel Johnson included it as porcelain in his 2-volume dictionary set, which shattered records worldwide in 1755. So this was one of the big first ever dictionaries that was really published as a compendium. And that was because China itself was invented in China. It makes sense, eh? I know you may think I'm a bit of a wacko, but I just love this kind of history. The language of English by this time was in a critical phase of needing a real dictionary to use on Earth. Johnson was approached by several printers in London to help fix the problem and took several years to perfect it. Plates, cups, and bowls were just decided to be called China in the English language. As this is a book and not an academic paper, I typically offer my bibliography. I'm well known as an expert in citation and references from my university studies and provided here. Johnson, S. 1755, a dictionary of the English language to which are prefixed a history of the language and an English grammar. This was a 2-volume set. And the BBC actually has a terrific documentary on Johnson. You can watch it on your smartphone or tablet. And while his actual dictionary can be bought for about $1,500 today from antique dealers, it's fun to look up words in the 1700s version online. And so when they came to, what should we put the China under, what should we call it, made from kaolinite, the white clay rock that they found in the ground was easy to melt, easy to pour. They made circular discs. They figured out you can glaze those and fire the white discs in an oven, and then they're terrific to eat off of. So you ask yourself, like, what are we going to file this under? And somebody said, look, since it comes from China, just put it under C in the category of the dictionary. Put it under C, China. Okay, it kind of makes sense. That's where we'll list it. So in the English dictionaries, the plates that we eat off of from China get categorized as China under the letter C. So, yeah, I guess I am a bit of a wacko. I think these things are cool. By the way, if you have a plate in front of you and you're eating with your hands, you're not considered, that barbaric in the United States. Only about a third of our population is eating with the new utensil called the fork. And of course, we know that Caterina de' Medici brought the fork from Italy when she was married to the King of France. And she showed him this is a fork. And so a lot of that stabbing of people at tables amongst the knights, sitting all around and having huge knives stuck into the table is what they would do. And then they would cut on meat in front of them and eating like that. They started to get a bit more cultured and eating and using the fork, which you'll often find forks of this period are 2-tine or 3-tine. Very popular today, I think, really is the 4-tine fork and sometimes 5-tine. Okay, but we have the old time forks in our Colonial Inn, the Inn of the Patriots. They're 3-tine forks, and so quite interesting to see where some of these things come from. And I would encourage you, if you would like, to take a look one more time at the presentation screen there. Let me just bring it up for you one more time and share my screen here for the Amazon page. Okay, so there you go. Right now we are carrying about a 4.8, and we do have audible samples, and you can do a reading sample as well. And if you just click on that, it'll bring you into doing a reading sample. And many, many, many people that I thanked in this book, obviously, that I was very appreciative of, my professors and doctors, and many, many others acknowledged, like many of my admirals. And it's amazing when your admirals come by, your bed and breakfast, and knock on the front door and scare you half to death. Take one here. He is a retired admiral, Admiral Joseph J. Kroll. He's right here. He recently come by and just knocked on the door, and he said, Marty, if I'd have warned you that I was coming, you would have cooked a steak or something and had like a big lunch prepared for me. And so, he's like, that's why I didn't warn you. So it was kind of funny. Last thing I'll mention today before we wrap up is, of course, Mary Patton, as I mentioned, will come from the Pennsylvania, one of our states here in America. She will come all the way down the Colonial Wagon Road, and often in one of the wagons made from Conestoga, Pennsylvania, where they are perfected and very famous from. It is a town called Conestoga. She will have a Conestoga wagon and come all the way down and then depart off that trail and head west into what we call during this period the Kentucky. So this is not actually really Kentucky. This is a term that is used meaning anywhere west in the forbidden area, the wilds where the Indians are. It is during this period, it is generally called Kentucky. Later on, we have a state called Kentucky, but she'll go off on a wilderness trail and then over to the settlement to live, which is very famous. And if I was to bring up a map and share that with you here, it would look kind of like this type of journey, heading all the way down south. So let me just do that for you. I'd like for you to be able to see this journey and where they would come down from. I'm going to share my screen again for a mapping screen and let you kind of sort of see. Let me zoom out a bit here and go all the way up to Carlisle, Pennsylvania. And here we have Charlotte, which is nearby. This is our big city named after Queen Charlotte. She's from the Duchy of Mecklenburg-Strelitz. She was an arranged marriage with, of course, King George III, the German king, who barely speaks any English. Of course, he's living in London, and they tell him, we've got a young lady that we've picked out for you. So coming from here into Pennsylvania, you can see west of Harrisburg over here is where Carlisle is. Carlisle, Pennsylvania. And so over here is where Mary is living. And one lady that comes to live there becomes super famous. She comes to live there and moves there a few months. You can see Carlisle right here. I'll click and highlight it for you. Carlisle, Pennsylvania. So this is kind of nice to live here. You have the Army barracks here for the United States Army in Carlisle. Very famous. This is kind of nice to live here because you have a town. I'll tell you one thing you have a clock tower that rings. Boom. You can actually set your timepiece off the clock or by listening to it. If you're living out in the woods, like Mary is moving to all the way down south, you have nothing to synchronize your watch with. You might as well leave your timepiece. And so here she's going to come all the way down. You can see Chambersburg all the way down through Frederick, Hagerstown. If you were to follow this Route 81 down like this through Harrisonburg and Charlottesville, all the way down this road through Roanoke. And this is kind of sort of the old wagon road that runs along this way through Charlottetown, Charlottesburg. Okay. And I'll just click on Charlotte for you there. And where you're headed is over here. Now today we have Pigeon Forge over here and Dollywood. And Dolly Parton has made this area very famous, of course. But this is where she's going to move to and live in what is Elizabethton, Tennessee. And this is where the Sycamore Shoals State Park is, very close here. So you can see this area, and let me bring that up for you there. I'll just do Elizabethton, Tennessee for you. This is Western North Carolina at the time. So, later on, it will actually change and we'll give half of our territory to the Tennessee. But North Carolina on all the maps at the time goes from the Atlantic Ocean to the Mississippi. Okay. And this actual territory before that extends from ocean to ocean. Okay. If you go back and look at the actual real territory here, you can see Sycamore Shoals State Park. This is where I was a guest speaker the day that this painting was revealed. They have a beautiful fort there, beautiful fort out back, and an unbelievable museum. And when you go in there, they have huge cast iron pots that belong to Mary Patton on display and a huge exhibit. So when we left this painting there for several months on display, it was on display there at Sycamore Shoals State Park. And with that, I'm going to wrap up and say thank you so much today for joining me on the Presents Network at Got Books in Shelby, North Carolina. Rainey, are you getting ready to say hi? No. Okay. So thank you for joining us today, and a little bit of information about Mary Patton and her life as an entrepreneur and how she got down here down south and making black powder her entire life to become extremely rich. I think the more you study about her, the more you'll see that, she ends up retiring with thousands of acres of land, selling that powder direct to customer, $1 a pound, was very profitable, and refusing to ever, have middlemen or to sell wholesale and allow wholesalers to then sell retail. just always selling person to person, direct to customer. So DTC, direct to customer, and unlocking uh, what was needed, by using bat dung to make the required elements of what she needed for niter and sulfur caves, and of course charcoal from pine here in the South is very famous. And then her water wheel power was super, important to have enough power to run a water wheel constantly right there by the stream. These four elements is what allowed her to be so successful. And when she heard that her source of niter was going to be from bat poop, and that the bats had been dropping in the caves for over 10,000 years, she was very, very convinced at that time, because, that is one of the best sources for niter that you can get. Okay. One of the best sources. So that with the sulfur caves where they had sulfur deposits that she could get, and of course the charcoal made from pine, combined, those are the three elements for making black powder, combined to be a very, very rich solution. And after this War of the Revolution, she would go on to become very famous because she will have contracts, guys, moving forward, and those will be during the War of 1812. And with that, I will say thank you so much for having me today and allowing me to show you this short movie that I had done. And we appreciate you so much. Take care and have a good one. Thank you for joining us on the Presents Streaming Network.